Harold Hawk sat quietly in the corner of Murphy's gun range, watching younger shooters handle their expensive rifles with practiced ease. At 78 years old, his weathered hands trembled slightly as he unwrapped the cloth bundle containing his most precious possession, a 1943 Springfield M1 rifle that had traveled with him through the battlefields of France and Germany during World War II. The rifle bore the scars of war. Small dents marked its wooden stock where it had been dropped during a frantic retreat near Bostonia. The metal showed patches of wear where Harold's grandfather's hands had gripped it during countless nights of guard duty. Despite its battle-worn appearance, Harold maintained the weapon with religious dedication, cleaning and oiling it every Sunday morning for the past 60 years. "Look at that old relic," whispered Jake, a 35-year-old competitive shooter who had dominated the regional marksmanship championships for the past 3 years. Jake's custom-built precision rifle cost more than Harold's monthly pension, equipped with the latest scope technology and ergonomic modifications. "Why doesn't the old-timer just put that museum piece where it belongs?" Jake's shooting partner nodded in agreement while adjusting his own high-tech equipment. "These old guys live in the past. Modern rifles are engineered for accuracy. That antique probably couldn't hit the broadside of a barn at 200 yards. Harold pretended not to hear their comments, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He had endured similar remarks for years at various shooting ranges across the state. Younger shooters often viewed his vintage rifle as an outdated curiosity, unable to comprehend the bond between a soldier and his weapon forged in the crucible of combat. The Murphy's Gun Range Annual Championship was approaching, and excitement filled the air as regular patrons discussed their preparations. The competition had stood unchallenged for 6 decades, with the current record holder being Thomas Deadeye, who had achieved an incredible score of 298 out of 300 possible points back in 1963 using a military surplus rifle remarkably similar to Harold's. Had been a Korean War veteran who understood the reliability and accuracy of properly maintained military weapons. His record had become legendary among local shooting enthusiasts, with many believing it would never be broken given the difficulty of the course and the pressure of competition. Jake had been training intensively for months, determined to finally claim the championship title that had eluded him despite his obvious skill. He spent hours each week at the range, fine-tuning his equipment and perfecting his technique. His expensive rifle represented the pinnacle of modern shooting technology, with a custom barrel, precision trigger system, and advanced optics that could theoretically place bullets within quarter-inch groups at extended distances. "This year I'm taking that record down," Jake announced loudly enough for everyone in the range to hear. Score might have been impressive 60 years ago, but modern equipment and training methods have evolved far beyond what those old-timers could imagine. Harold continued his methodical preparation, loading 8-round end-block clips with ammunition he had hand-selected for optimal performance. Each cartridge had been inspected multiple times, with Harold checking powder charges, bullet seating depth, and case condition with the thoroughness of a craftsman. His ritual remained unchanged from his military days, when a misfeed or misfire could mean the difference between life and death. The other shooters watched Harold's antiquated loading process with mixture of amusement and impatience. Modern rifles used detachable magazines that could be loaded quickly and efficiently, while Harold's end-block clip system required each round to be pressed down individually, producing the distinctive ping sound when the empty clip was ejected. "Grandpa's playing soldier again," muttered, causing several nearby shooters to chuckle. Maybe someone should tell him the war ended 70 years ago. Harold's wife had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him alone with memories and mementos from their 55-year marriage. The rifle represented one of his last connections to the young man he had been, the soldier who had survived the Battle of the Bulge and helped liberate concentration camps in the war's final months. Every time he held the weapon, he could almost hear the voices of fallen comrades who had trusted their lives to similar rifles. The range officer announced that registration for the annual championship would close in 2 weeks, with the competition scheduled for the first Saturday in October. Prize money totaled $5,000, with additional trophies recognizing various categories of achievement. More importantly for the participants, the winner would have their name permanently engraved on the championship plaque that hung prominently in the range's main hallway. Jake immediately signed up, confident that his preparation and equipment would finally secure him the recognition he craved. registered as well, hoping to capitalize on his recent improvement in long-distance accuracy. Several other regular patrons added their names to the growing list of competitors. Harold studied the registration form for several minutes before quietly approaching the range officer's desk. His entry fee represented a significant portion of his fixed income, but something deep inside compelled him to compete one final time. Perhaps it was the memory of his grandfather, who had taught him to shoot with this same rifle on the family farm in Nebraska. Maybe it was the dismissive attitudes of younger shooters who couldn't appreciate the weapon's capabilities. Or possibly, it was simply the stubborn pride of an old soldier who refused to fade quietly into obscurity. "I'd like to enter the championship," Harold said softly, placing $25 on the counter. The range officer looked surprised but processed Harold's registration with professional courtesy. "Good luck, mister. It's been a while since we've had a vintage rifle in the competition." Jake overheard the transaction and burst into laughter. "This should be entertaining. I almost feel bad taking money from a pensioner, but someone needs to teach these old guys about reality." Harold nodded politely at Jake's comment and returned to his shooting position. He loaded a fresh end block clip and settled into his familiar firing stance, a position perfected through countless hours of military training and decades of practice. His first shot rang out with the distinctive crack of this .3006 cartridge, followed by 7 more rounds fired in smooth succession. When Harold retrieved his target, the results showed 8 bullets clustered within a 3-inch group at 100 yards. While respectable for any rifle, the performance failed to match the sub-inch groups that modern precision weapons could achieve under ideal conditions. Jake and exchanged knowing glances, their confidence reinforced by what they perceived as Harold's limitations. What the younger shooters didn't realize was that Harold had been deliberately shooting loose groups to conserve his best ammunition for the competition. His practice sessions focused on fundamentals rather than precision, emphasizing breathing control, trigger management, and position stability. These skills, honed through military training and maintained through decades of dedication, would prove far more valuable than expensive equipment when pressure mounted during actual competition. Harold packed his rifle carefully and prepared to leave, his weekly range session complete. As he walked past Jake's shooting position, the younger man called out mockingly, "Hey, old-timer, you might want to consider upgrading to something manufactured this century. I'd hate to see you embarrass yourself in front of everyone." Harold paused momentarily, his eyes meeting Jake's with quiet intensity. "Son, this rifle has never let me down when it mattered. I reckon it won't start now." The words carried weight that Jake couldn't quite understand, spoken with conviction born from experiences far removed from recreational shooting competitions. Harold continued toward the exit, leaving behind an atmosphere charged with unspoken challenge and mounting anticipation for the upcoming championship. 2 weeks of preparation lay ahead, with each competitor following their own training regimen. Jake increased his practice schedule, firing hundreds of rounds through his precision rifle while fine-tuning every adjustable component. Invested in upgraded ammunition and professional coaching to maximize his chances of success. Harold maintained his Sunday cleaning ritual and continued his weekly range sessions, but his real preparation took place in the quiet hours at home. He studied wind charts and weather patterns, reviewed marksmanship fundamentals from his military manuals, and most importantly, spent time handling his rifle until it became an extension of his body once again. The had saved his life numerous times during the war, never failing to fire when needed most. Its 8-round capacity had seemed limiting compared to enemy weapons, but American soldiers learned to make every shot count. Harold had carried those lessons through 60 years of civilian life, understanding that accuracy meant far more than simply hitting targets on a peaceful shooting range. As the championship approached, word spread throughout the local shooting community about the unusual matchup between cutting-edge equipment and vintage military hardware. Many viewed it as symbolic of generational change in shooting sports, with traditional methods giving way to technological advancement and scientific precision. Few suspected that they were about to witness something far more significant than a simple marksmanship competition. Harold carried with him the accumulated wisdom of combat experience, the discipline of military training, and the quiet determination of a man who had nothing left to prove except to himself. The stage was set for a confrontation between past and present, between respect and mockery, between the proven reliability of battle-tested equipment and the theoretical superiority of modern technology. In 2 weeks, Murphy's gun range would host more than a shooting competition. It would become the arena where old-fashioned skill met contemporary arrogance, and where a 78-year-old veteran would remind everyone present that true marksmanship transcends equipment and encompasses the complete integration of mind, body, and weapon, achieved through decades of dedicated practice. The morning of the championship arrived with crisp autumn air and clear skies, perfect conditions that would eliminate weather as an excuse for poor performance. Harold arrived at Murphy's gun range 30 minutes before the official start time, carrying his rifle case and a small canvas bag containing ammunition he had meticulously prepared over the previous 2 weeks. Inside the range, 23 competitors checked equipment and reviewed course requirements, while spectators gathered to witness what many expected to be Jake's crowning achievement. The championship format consisted of shooting from 4 different positions at varying distances, with each stage designed to test different aspects of marksmanship skill. Stage 1 required 10 shots from the prone position at 100 yards, emphasizing fundamental accuracy and breathing control. Stage 2 involved 10 shots from sitting position at 200 yards, testing stability and wind compensation. Stage 3 challenged shooters with 10 shots from kneeling position at 300 yards, where equipment advantages would become most apparent. The final stage demanded 10 shots from standing position at 100 yards, the most difficult challenge where natural shooting ability trumped technological assistance. Each shot scored a maximum of 10 points for hitting the center ring, with decreasing values for impacts in outer rings. A perfect score of 400 points had never been achieved in the competition's 60-year history, though Thomas' 298 had come tantalizingly close to perfection. Jake arrived fashionably late, his custom rifle case drawing admiring glances from spectators and fellow competitors. His equipment represented nearly $15,000 in precision engineering, from the match-grade barrel to the computer-designed stock that fit his body measurements exactly. Followed closely behind, carrying his own expensive setup with obvious pride. "Well, well," Jake announced loudly upon spotting Harold setting up at a corner bench. "I see the museum exhibit made it after all. This should provide some comic relief between serious shooting." Harold ignored the comment while unpacking his rifle with methodical care. Each component received inspection despite having been checked countless times at home. The barrel bore showed no signs of fouling, the action cycled smoothly, and the trigger broke cleanly at exactly 4 pounds of pressure, the same specifications it had maintained since leaving Springfield Armory 8 decades earlier. Other competitors gathered around Jake's position to examine his rifle's advanced features. The scope alone cost more than Harold's monthly Social Security check, incorporating laser technology and ballistic calculators that automatically adjusted for atmospheric conditions. The weapon's carbon fiber stock weighed less than Harold's wooden furniture while providing superior rigidity and vibration dampening. "That old probably weighs twice what my rifle does," observed while handling Jake's equipment. "Poor old guy will be shaking like a leaf by the 4th stage." Harold's rifle indeed weighed nearly 11 pounds fully loaded, compared to the 8-pound average of modern precision weapons. However, those extra pounds provided stability that younger shooters couldn't appreciate, and Harold's decades of practice had built the muscle memory and endurance necessary to handle the weight effectively. Competition rules were announced 15 minutes before the first stage, with shooters divided into 4 groups that would rotate through each position. Harold found himself assigned to Group 3, along with Jake, and 7 other competitors who would complete the entire course together. "This works out perfectly," Jake whispered too. "I'll get to watch the old-timer struggle firsthand. Maybe he'll learn something about modern shooting techniques." The first group took their positions on the firing line, while remaining competitors observed from the covered pavilion behind the shooting stations. Harold watched quietly as younger shooters demonstrated their skills, nodding their techniques and equipment choices with the analytical eye of someone who had survived by understanding enemy capabilities. Most competitors used bipods or sandbags to stabilize their rifles during prone shooting, relying on artificial support rather than developing natural bone-to-ground contact that military marksmen learned to achieve without external aids. Their shooting positions looked technically correct, but lacked the fluid integration between shooter and weapon that characterized true expertise. When Group 3's turn arrived, Harold claimed the end position on the firing line, away from other shooters who might be distracted by his rifle's distinctive report and en-bloc clip ejection. Jake positioned himself in the center of the line, surrounded by spectators eager to witness his anticipated domination of the championship. "Shooters, you have 20 minutes to complete 10 shots from prone position at 100 yards, announced the range officer. "Load your weapons and prepare to fire." Harold loaded his first en-bloc clip with practiced efficiency, chambering a round and settling into the prone position he had learned at Camp Perry in 1943. His natural bone support eliminated any tremor, creating a stable platform that required no artificial assistance. Jake deployed his bipod and adjusted his scope's magnification to maximum power for the relatively close 100-yard target. The first shots rang out across the range as competitors began their attempts at the championship record. Jake's expensive rifle produced tiny holes clustered near the target center, each impact accompanied by his satisfied grunts of approval. Struggled slightly with wind compensation despite the calm conditions, his shots forming a loose group several inches from perfect center. Harold fired his 8 rounds in steady succession, this action cycling smoothly as empty brass cases arced away from the ejection port. When his en-bloc clip ejected with its characteristic ping, nearby shooters glanced over with amusement at the antiquated loading system. "Sounds like a dinner bell," Jake commented loudly. "Maybe someone should tell him the cavalry charge is over." Harold reloaded calmly and fired 2 additional shots to complete the 10-round stage. His target showed all 10 bullets clustered within the center ring, earning maximum points for the first stage. Jake's target displayed similar accuracy, with 9 shots in the center ring and 1 slightly outside for a score of 99 points. "Lucky first stage," muttered while examining Harold's target through binoculars. "Let's see how he does when the distance increases." The second stage moved to 200 yards with shooters firing from sitting position. This distance began revealing equipment advantages, as scopes provided clearer target definition and precision barrels delivered groups. Jake's confidence grew as his shots clustered within an area smaller than a silver dollar, demonstrating the capabilities of modern shooting technology. Harold adopted the cross-legged sitting position taught to infantry soldiers, using bone support and sling tension to create stability without artificial aids. His first shot struck the target center, followed by 9 more impacts that formed a tight group, earning him another perfect score of 100 points. "This is getting interesting," observed the range officer while recording scores. "Mister is shooting like he's half his age." Jake's irritation became visible as Harold maintained his perfect performance despite using equipment that belonged in a museum. The younger shooter's own accuracy remained excellent, but several shots strayed slightly from center ring, costing him valuable points that might determine the final championship outcome. Stage 3 at 300 yards separated serious marksmen from recreational shooters. At this distance, every element of rifle and ammunition performance became, with minor flaws translating into significant point losses. Wind conditions, though minimal, required careful reading and compensation to maintain accuracy. "Now we'll see what that old relic can really do," Jake announced while adjusting his scope for the extended range. 300 yards is where precision equipment proves its worth." Harold studied the target through his iron sights, reading wind indicators and adjusting his point of aim based on experience gained from countless hours of practice at extended ranges. Military marksmen learned to engage targets at distances far beyond civilian shooting ranges, developing skills that remained sharp decades after leaving active service. His first shot at 300 yards struck the center ring dead center, followed by 9 more impacts that grouped within an area smaller than many competitors achieved at 100 yards. The performance drew scattered applause from spectators who began recognizing they were witnessing something exceptional. Jake's expensive scope provided crystal-clear target resolution, but his shots began scattering as pressure mounted and his confidence wavered. 3 bullets missed the center ring entirely, dropping his stage score to 87 points and effectively eliminating his chances of breaking's record. "Equipment doesn't shoot by itself," Harold said quietly while packing his rifle for the final stage. It takes practice and patience to get the most out of any weapon. The final stage required 10 shots from standing position at 100 yards, traditionally the most difficult challenge in any marksmanship competition. Without artificial support, shooters relied entirely on natural ability and thousands of hours of practice to maintain accuracy while fighting gravity, breathing, and involuntary muscle tremors. Jake's sophisticated rifle offered no advantage in unsupported shooting, with its lightweight construction actually working against him, as the reduced mass provided less stability for offhand shooting. Harold's heavy, though challenging to hold steady for extended periods, offered superior natural stability once proper position was achieved. "Final stage," announced the range officer. "This is where championships are won or lost." Harold stepped to the firing line carrying 60 years of shooting experience and the quiet confidence of a man who had never doubted his abilities when they mattered most. Jake's earlier arrogance had transformed into grim determination as he realized his expensive equipment couldn't compensate for Harold's superior fundamental skills. The crowd fell silent as both shooters prepared for their final 10 shots, with 60-year record hanging in the balance and a lifetime of respect for a World War II veteran at stake. Harold loaded his final en bloc clip while Jake made last-minute scope adjustments, each man preparing to demonstrate whether modern technology or time-tested skill would ultimately prevail in the championship that had captured everyone's attention. Harold settled into his standing position with the fluid motion of someone who had performed this ritual thousands of times. His left hand found its natural grip on the rifles, while his right hand wrapped around the pistol grip with familiar comfort. The sling adjusted automatically to provide just enough tension for support without restricting natural movement. Jake struggled with his lightweight rifle, fighting to maintain steady aim as the weapon's reduced mass amplified every minor tremor. His expensive scope, perfectly calibrated for supported shooting, now seemed like dead weight as he battled to keep the crosshairs centered on the distant target. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool October air. "First shooter, you may commence firing when ready," announced the range officer. Harold drew a deep breath and released half of it, settling into that perfect moment between heartbeats where the rifle became an extension of his body. His finger applied steady pressure to the trigger until the fired with its distinctive crack, sending the first bullet downrange toward the 100-yard target. Through his iron sights, Harold watched the target frame shudder slightly as his bullet punched through the center ring with mechanical precision. 8 decades of muscle memory guided every movement as he realigned his sights for the second shot, breathing naturally and maintaining perfect trigger control despite the pressure of competition and spectators. Jake fired his first shot immediately after Harold, his bullet striking slightly left of center as his artificially supported shooting technique failed to translate effectively to unsupported standing position. The miss cost him precious points and rattled his confidence as he realized his equipment advantages meant nothing in this final crucial stage. "Come on, Jake," called from the spectator area. "Show that old man what real shooting looks like." The encouragement backfired as Jake's second shot pulled even further left, missing the center ring entirely and dropping him another 3 points. His expensive rifle, designed for precision bench shooting, felt unwieldy and unbalanced when fired without artificial support. The lightweight barrel began heating up from rapid fire, affecting accuracy as metal expansion changed the rifle's harmonics. Harold continued his methodical pace, firing one shot every 15 seconds with the rhythm of a metronome. Each bullet found the center ring with uncanny consistency, earning maximum points while Jake's score deteriorated with every pull of his trigger. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the 78-year-old veteran systematically dismantled Jake's championship dreams with an obsolete military rifle. By the 7th shot, Jake's frustration became evident as his shooting position deteriorated under pressure. His shots scattered across the target face, some missing scoring rings entirely as he fought equipment that demanded different techniques than he had mastered. The precision rifle that had dominated local competitions became a liability in the hands of someone who had never learned fundamental unsupported shooting skills. Harold's 7th shot struck dead center like all the others, followed by his 8th, which also earned maximum points. His breathing remained controlled, and his movement stayed fluid despite holding an 11-pound rifle unsupported for nearly 8 minutes. Decades of physical conditioning and practice had prepared his body for exactly this type of endurance challenge. "2 more shots, mister," the range officer announced unnecessarily, as Harold had been counting rounds automatically since loading his en-bloc clip. Jake's 8th shot missed the target frame entirely, disappearing into the backstop without scoring any points. His carefully planned championship attempt lay in ruins, as he realized he would finish the competition with one of the worst scores in recent memory. The expensive equipment that was supposed to guarantee victory had proven useless when fundamental skills were lacking. Harold fired his 9th shot with the same mechanical precision that had characterized every previous round. The bullet struck the exact center of the target, joining 8 others in a group so tight it appeared to be a single large hole when viewed from the firing line. One shot remained between Harold and a perfect score that would shatter 60-year record by 2 full points. The range fell completely silent as spectators recognized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even Jake stopped shooting to watch Harold prepare for his final shot, temporarily forgetting his own humiliation as the magnitude of the veteran's performance became clear. Harold loaded his final round and settled into position one last time. This shot would determine whether his name joined the pantheon of legendary marksmen or if he would fall short by the narrowest margin possible. The weight of 60 years seemed to rest on this single bullet, representing every lesson learned, every hour practiced, and every memory of comrades who had trusted their lives to similar rifles. His breathing steadied as muscle memory took complete control. The front sight post aligned perfectly with the target center, while his finger found the trigger's sweet spot with practiced ease. Time seemed suspended as Harold reached that perfect moment where everything aligned: mind, body, weapon, and target united in absolute harmony. The fired one final time, its .3006 cartridge propelling the last bullet of Harold's competition toward the distant target. The shot felt perfect from the moment it left the barrel, traveling true and straight across the 100-yard distance to strike the target center with finality that everyone could sense even before confirmation. Harold lowered his rifle and engaged the safety with automatic precision, then stood quietly while range officers retrieved targets for official scoring. The distinctive ping of his en-bloc clip ejecting marked the end of his shooting, leaving behind only the echo of the final shot and the stunned silence of spectators who had witnessed something they would discuss for years to come. Jake holstered his rifle without firing his remaining shots, knowing that finishing the course would only add to his embarrassment. His final score would total 267 points, respectable by most standards, but woefully inadequate compared to Harold's performance. Had already stopped shooting after the 8th round, unwilling to continue humiliating himself in front of people who had expected him to challenge for the championship. "Targets are scored and," announced the range officer after conferring with 2 other officials. "Harold, shooting a 1943 Springfield M1 rifle, has achieved a perfect score of 400 points, setting a new range record and exceeding Thomas' previous record by 2 points. The announcement triggered thunderous applause from spectators who recognized they had witnessed marksmanship perfection. 40 shots fired under pressure over 4 different stages, and every single bullet had found the center ring without exception. It was a feat that professional shooters attempted their entire careers without achieving. Harold accepted congratulations with the quiet dignity that had characterized his entire life. He showed no satisfaction at Jake's humiliation or excitement about his record-breaking performance. For him, the rifle had simply performed as it always had when properly maintained and skillfully employed. "How did you do it?" asked a young spectator who had watched the entire competition with growing amazement. "How did you shoot perfect scores with that old rifle?" Harold smiled gently while packing his in its worn canvas case. "Son, this rifle was designed by men who understood that accuracy comes from the partnership between shooter and weapon. It doesn't matter how old something is if it's properly maintained and you know how to use it." Jake approached Harold's bench with obvious reluctance, his earlier arrogance replaced by grudging respect. "I guess I owe you an apology, old-timer. That was some pretty impressive shooting." "No apology necessary," Harold replied while shouldering his rifle case. "Everyone's got to learn somewhere. Maybe next time you'll spend more time practicing fundamentals instead of buying new equipment." As Harold walked toward the parking lot, several spectators followed to examine his rifle and ask questions about his shooting techniques. He answered patiently, explaining breathing control, trigger management, and position stability with the thoroughness of someone who genuinely wanted others to succeed. "Will you be back next year to defend your title?" asked the range officer while presenting Harold with the championship trophy and $5,000 prize check. Harold considered the question while studying the trophy that would bear his name alongside Thomas and other shooting legends. "I reckon this old rifle, and I have proven what we needed to prove. Might be time to let younger folks have their turn." The drive home gave Harold time to reflect on the day's events and what they meant in the context of his long life. The victory represented more than simple marksmanship. It validated the skills, training, and equipment that had served him faithfully through war and peace. More importantly, it demonstrated that experience and dedication could triumph over technology and arrogance when applied with proper understanding. That evening, Harold cleaned his rifle with the same methodical care he had shown for 60 years. Each component received attention as he reflected on the weapon's remarkable performance and the memories it carried from battlefields to shooting ranges. The had never failed him when it mattered most, whether facing German soldiers in 1944 or modern competitors in 2024. News of Harold's record-breaking performance spread quickly through shooting communities across the region. Social media posts shared details of the 78-year-old veteran who had used a World War II rifle to achieve marksmanship perfection, inspiring other older shooters to dust off their own vintage weapons and return to competition. Jake spent the following weeks practicing fundamental shooting positions with borrowed equipment, gradually learning to appreciate accuracy over technology. His expensive precision rifle remained in its case while he developed skills that should have preceded equipment purchases. The humiliation at Murphy's gun range had taught him valuable lessons about marksmanship that money couldn't buy. Harold's trophy found a place of honor on his mantelpiece beside photographs of and mementos from his military service. The $5,000 prize money went toward a scholarship fund for young marksmen who demonstrated dedication to fundamental shooting skills rather than reliance on expensive equipment. 3 months after the championship, Harold passed away peacefully in his sleep, his rifle cleaned and ready beside his bed as it had been every night for 60 years. His funeral drew hundreds of mourners, including many young shooters who had learned valuable lessons from his example and approach to marksmanship. The rifle was donated to the Murphy's Gun Range Museum, where it remains on display beside Harold's championship trophy and a plaque describing his remarkable achievement. Visitors often pause to examine the battle-scarred weapon that proved age and experience could triumph over youth and technology when guided by proper training and unwavering dedication. Jake eventually became a strong advocate for fundamental marksmanship training, often telling new shooters about the day a World War II veteran taught him that true accuracy comes from the marriage of skill and weapon rather than expensive equipment. His own shooting improved dramatically once he learned to appreciate traditional techniques over technological shortcuts. Harold's legacy lived on in the lessons he taught through example rather than words. His perfect score of 400 points stood as testimony that some things transcend time and fashion, that proper training, dedicated practice, and respect for proven equipment could achieve results that impressed even skeptics who had dismissed him as an outdated relic from a bygone era. The 1943 Springfield M1 rifle continues to inspire new generations of marksmen who understand that true shooting excellence requires more than expensive equipment and modern technology. Harold's story reminds everyone that experience earned through decades of dedication represents a form of wealth that cannot be purchased at any price, only acquired through patience, practice, and profound respect for the craft of precision shooting.